Welcome to episode 5 of Roanoke Remembered. Today host John Garland chats with Stephanie Moon, candidate for Roanoke City Mayor, about her 42 years of service in Roanoke City Government. So sit back and enjoy episode 5 of Roanoke Remembered.
Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, John.
Welcome to Roanoke Remembered. And I'd like to introduce you to everybody that may listen and watch this video, podcast. So this is Stephanie Moon. Stephanie Moon is running for the mayor of the city of Roanoke.
Yes.
And I'm supporting Stephanie because I think she'll be the best mayor we've had in quite some time. And one of the reasons I think that is because of all the institutional knowledge that you bring to the table. And that institutional knowledge comes from the fact that you worked for the city of Roanoke.
Yes, sir.
For 42 years.
I worked for 42 years.
Involved with everything the city council ever did, every movement the city council ever did, you were involved with it and you wrote it down for historical purposes. So we're going to talk about that too.
Okay.
You also are on city council now and have been on city council for 4 years.
First term.
So you continued that career of 42 years with 4 more on city council.
Yes.
You're a lifetime Roanoker.
Yes.
You've been in Roanoke your entire life. I won't say
sir.
how many years that is, but you've been here a long time.
Long time.
And you've been here long enough to raise 3 generations.
Yes, working on the 3rd generation.
So that says a lot there too.
Yes,
and your
sir.
family all is still in Roanoke
Yes,
because they found opportunities to be able to stay in Roanoke.
That's correct.
So people now know a little bit about you, but I want to have them get to know you a little better by asking you some questions about that institutional knowledge. So one of the things I always think about when I think about mayors of Roanoke is, well, who has been mayor, who's been my favorite mayor, who've been the good mayors over the years, and you've seen a lot of different mayors.
Yes, actually I've seen 5.
5 different
mayors. 5 mayors, starting with Noah Taylor. When I first got hired in the city clerk's office in 1978, Mayor Taylor was there, just come in as mayor.
Well, he's my favorite.
Yes, and he's got the longest tenure as mayor. He was mayor for 17 years. And then you have David Bowers, who served separate terms in two terms, but they've been separate. So Mayor Bowers has served 16 years, along with his other part being on council. He came on council in 1984. And then you have Ralph Smith, who served from 2000 to 2004. And then you had Nelson Harris, who served also as mayor, and then Sherman Lee.
Well, let me ask you, I mentioned that my favorite mayor, not to slight into the other mayor, but my favorite mayor was Noah Taylor, because I felt like he was an exceptionally good mayor. Tell me one thing you remember about Noah Taylor and why you think he was a good mayor.
There's a lot I can recall about Mayor Taylor. Mayor Taylor was a people's mayor. We saw in clerk's office, when I say we, the staff, we saw another side of him, a personal side. He was a very personable person. And he was funny. He used to come in the evening time. And I tell this a lot. We would have to wait around for him because he always wanted to say goodnight. We were his ladies. So he would always come in and we would sit around the table, listen to what happened in his day. Or he would come in the mornings and we would have break time. But when he went away, he always thought about the ladies. And he would always bring us gifts. So just like a typical woman, you always look forward to a man coming in and bringing you a gift. And he celebrated our birthdays. That was a tradition. He took each staff person out for their birthday. My first birthday he carried me to Mill Mountain Star. I had never seen the Star, even though I lived in the city all my life. Never had transportation to get to the Star, but he took me. That was my ride around, was to Mill Mountain Star.
But what do you remember about him being the mayor that you feel like made him a good mayor in terms of serving the public?
I believe what I saw in Noah that I just thought was something great was his sincerity to the people. He met with the people on a regular basis. He had office appointments. Before Mayor Taylor, there was not even an office, no way secretary. But when Noah became mayor, we created, or the city clerk's office did, we gave him office space and gave him a secretary. And he would meet people. And I liked the way he presided over the council meetings. At that time, you didn't have, the policy was a person could come before city council and they would be heard. And then it would be determined through interaction and dialogue, that item being referred to the city manager. And then there would always be a report of a recommendation coming back. That's something I liked about him. He was always engaged. He engaged the community. People respected him. It didn't matter what walks of life you came from. It was not uncommon to see him just standing on the street, just waiting for him to come upstairs, and he would be talking with a citizen.
So can you contrast that a bit with how the public engages with city council right now?
The difference is now we have timelines on everything, where a person feels they can just only come and speak, and then they're not literally heard. Their voice is not heard. It's just, you just say something, time's up, and you don't know what the outcome is going to be. Am I going to get an answer? Who's going to answer me? There is no direction.
And what would you like to see change to make that different?
I would like to see, again, the way it was, allow citizens to come. Under hearing of citizens, you can talk about any non-agenda items. You can come and speak and be heard, but if it's an item that really needs to be studied or recommended on, I would like for the mayor bring that policy back where the council has that dialogue with that citizen, because the public is watching now. Something before we used to not have until I think it was about 2000 or so when we started televising. So that was a plus, so that the community is engaged from that standpoint. But if something is referred, they never hear about it. What is the outcome?
The notator was, I saw him as what I felt like a mayor should be, which is an outgoing personality, engaging the public, inviting the public to engage city council, very communicative, and that's what I liked. That's what I think a lot of people liked about him.
Mm-hmm.
Another mayor that you have to go way back for that you didn't mention, which was there before your service, is Roy L. Weber.
Yes.
And he served a very long time too. Actually served 2 different terms. I talked about him a little bit on one of my former podcasts. He was actually a mentor of mine growing up because he lived right around the corner from me on Williamson Road. So that goes way back. You also served under a lot of city managers, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
How many would that be?
I served under, now we're going to go under 6. I served under Burn Ewart when Burn Ewart came to the city. I had been there probably a few months when Burn became city manager after, I believe, Brian Hayner. I think that was the one that was prior to him. He succeeded him. And then after Burn left in 1985, we had Bob Herbert, who was his assistant city manager at the time. So I served under Bob Herbert. And then when Bob left in 1999, Darlene Bertram came. And so I had the pleasure of working with Darlene Bertram. And then when Darlene Bertram left, and I want to say 07, I believe, then we got Chris Morrow. And then Chris Morrow left, and then we got, in 2018, we ended up with Bob Cow.
Well, let's talk about city management styles. Everybody has their own style of leading a city. Of those ones you mentioned, again, they all had good points and not so good points. Tell me what your favorite city manager was and maybe the reason why.
My favorite city manager happens to be H. Burn Ewart. And I say that because Burn, I called him, and I say this affectionately, Burn was a man of fire. He was a man who stayed focused, and he saw, and he had vision. And in his short time when he was manager, before leaving in 85, Burn turned this city around. He believed in connecting neighborhoods. The neighborhood partnership came into existence. Burn even changed the organizational structure. He created a chief of community planning, a chief of economic development. And to me, those were 2 important driving factors. When you look at what's going to move the city, what do the city need? You need development. And also you need some community planning in that, which is your zonings or what have you. So with that, Burn did that, but Burn also walked around and met the people where they were at. Byrne created departments that he thought would benefit the city. And in that, it was a city family. Byrne would walk down the streets. People knew who Byrne was, and he held his employees accountable. That's something I believe that is not there today, accountability.
So it sounds like you and I agree that the best city manager we ever had was Byrne Ewart, and the best mayor we ever had was Noel Taylor, and they happened to be the mayor and the city manager at the same time.
That's correct.
So when you have those two great personalities, great at what they were doing together, serving at the same time, you can see a lot of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people in our city right now don't remember those two because
That's
that was
right.
35 years ago when he left, 40 years ago when he started. So I remember, and I remember what Byrne and Noel did, and I remember transformational things beginning to happen downtown after downtown died. You know, Byrne was responsible for really revitalizing the market.
Yes.
With this, it was called Design 79. Do you remember that?
I remember that. And also Campbell Court, when he did the facade to keep the facade when he created Campbell Court.
Right, and all the work with Center and Square and bringing the Market Street back, and the market building and so forth, they were responsible for that. So what do you think clicked between the two of them? What made it different so that they could be so successful?
My thinking would be Mayor Taylor had a heart for the people. He was sincere in what was needed for the community, and Byrne came with that too from the city side, the leadership piece, the CEO piece of running the city, and Mayor Taylor was from the constituents, what he would hear out in the public, but also Byrne made himself known in the public. So people, if not him, his department, his staff. He had his staff being accountable in the community. If they saw something, he expected them to report it, not relied on citizenry to come and tell you what they see needed to be improved. And also, I think between the two of them, they were accessible. They answered you if you called, or they made sure someone followed up with you. And again, that brings us back to the council meetings. Byrne was at the council meeting. So if council referred something, Byrne was on it to report back at the next council meeting or thereafter, but also the council itself. When I think about who was on council, even if they were disagreeing, they agreed to disagree, but they worked together for the betterment of the city.
So I hear communication, I hear transparency, I hear engaging people, trying to understand what people want as being things that made the difference, and all those things are so important and things that I really want to see going forward with our city council and our city leadership. Do you think you'll bring that to the table for us?
I think I could. I believe, again, growing up here, having put in my entire career working in council's office, and that last 14 being the city clerk, being in those meetings with them, seeing the ins and outs and knowing how to navigate and knowing what works and what don't work, I think I can. And that's the missing piece. We no longer want to talk with people. We have allowed social media to be primary instead of secondary. And I believe in open door policy. And having retired, I'm full time and I do belong to the people, although I will set aside some of my own time. But I will be there. I will be willing to come to them, meet them, or even now as council, I meet people. I come out, I engage. So I don't see anything different from that standpoint. But also working with your council to understand that we're public servants. And if we're going to be public servants, then we need to allow the community to have a voice.
Well, one of the things I like about you, and you're an independent, and I ran as independent when I was on council, and you want to listen to both sides of the argument.
Yes.
You may have your own opinions when you start. Your opinions may change through the process, but when you're talking about an issue, you want to hear from Republicans, you want to hear from Democrats, you want to hear from right wing, left wing, rich, poor, whatever.
Yes.
And so that everybody can be heard and not just one side or the other. You know,
Correct.
one of the things that I hear on criticism right now is that it seems like every decision council makes is on one side or the other, and one side doesn't get a voice. And what I like about you, again, is you are going to hear all the voices.
Yes. And you find that, and my record speaks to that. In the last 4 years since I've been on council, that's something I'm always saying. It's a process. And part of that process is community engagement. And I'm asking always from the leadership, the city manager's office and staff, what is the process? How did you handle the process? Were all enough voices heard? What did you use to get that information out? And how did you assimilate that when you got it back?
Well, speaking of process, one of the things that was recently adopted by City Council was a new zoning ordinance, which allows multifamily in every neighborhood in the city of Roanoke. And there's been a lot of criticism of that. And you've been one of those that have been critical, and you didn't vote for it yourself.
Correct.
Tell us some reasons why you didn't vote for it and what you'd like to see going forward in terms of how things should be different than how that was handled.
Yeah, I voted for it. I voted against it for one main reason. There was no community engagement. The city.
But we hired a high-priced consultant that was supposed to make sure we had community engagement.
But that's it. The consultant worked with the city to get them to where they needed to be over the years doing their process. But even in that, you only held so many meetings, but you made them convenient for yourself. You held them at libraries, and you gave the times. And some of those times were during the time when people were working. You didn't reach out to the neighborhood associations. You didn't offer to come together in just an open space. You just rushed it. You did it within a short period of time, within a 2-month time, and said, we're going to meet here, 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 and here. And then you're going to have a public hearing before the planning commission. And then the week later, after the planning commission, you're going to meet before city council. And we're going to allow citizens to sign up and get 3 minutes to be heard. And then we're going to hear more time spent on staff, but not the community. And I'm still saying there are those who don't still understand. I reached out to Northwest neighborhood. They had no clue of what I was even thinking of, speaking of. And I also brought up the fact that there were still 3 legal battles going on: Charlottesville, Arlington, and Alexandria. Shouldn't we wait to see what those outcomes are? And so I didn't feel comfortable because of that. Although I had spent 90 minutes looking at what the zoning reforms were, the amendments were going to be, I still felt that should this be citywide? That was my question. And I was uncomfortable with that.
I, as a developer, understand zoning regulations and have a broad understanding of what this new ordinance entails, but still it's very specific for every neighborhood. So I would think that if you went into a particular neighborhood group, you should be able to use examples to explain the ordinance. As an example, if I own a lot that's so many square feet of house, so many square foot of property, how many people can I have living in that house that unrelated? How many outbuildings can I build that can have someone living in it? Get very specific as to what does that mean for my neighborhood so that people have an understanding of it.
And again, that's what we did not do. And so when we came back 2 months ago, I guess it's been, and we did a repeal, I thought we were repealing what we did.
So you could study more, right?
So we could study more. But what we repealed was almost repealing the portion where it was going. I guess, I don't really know what we repealed. They couldn't explain that piece to me either. So I had to say no, because even in the measure, it just said we will have public meetings. You were not transparent enough to say this is coming back in August. So we went from June to August, 60 days, but yet you still had not done any outreach. And here we are now, a month before it's time, and you still have really not done anything.
Well, my understanding it was formality for legal purposes.
And that's what we found out because of the classification of the advertisement, and that a new law has come into effect. And you have yet to explain that piece to me. What does this new law say about notices of public hearings?
Well, to me, that ordinance is an example of you go from one example all the way to one extreme where you can only have single family in most of the neighborhoods to another extreme where every neighborhood can be multifamily. And it's like a lot of decisions where the best decision is probably somewhere in the middle where you can do both, have both.
Right.
And we seem to never get to that compromise position because we don't give ourselves time to hear the other sides of the story. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, and that's where I'm at. I still want to pause because, as you know, John, we are now looking at hiring a new city manager. And my thing is it fair or is it a right thing to do is adopt something such on this large scale and then have a manager come in within another 60 days or even 90 days and say, this is what we've done. And then they're trying to get an understanding of what the rules are now for this zoning. I feel that this manager who is going to be head of the organization, shouldn't he have some say as to when this should be implemented? So I still very uncomfortable. And I'll tell you now, nothing has changed other than the advertisement on that. My answer still will be no, because you have not sent out anything to all residents of the city of Roanoke. Why not a note card saying that there is going to be some changes made citywide? We're going to hold some public meetings. You yet to do that, but you're willing to put it on social media. And what do I always say about that? Everyone is not on social media.
You have to use a variety of ways.
There you go. Yes.
Well, moving on from the ordinance, you're going to be one vote in who is our next city manager. So I had to ask you, and I think I may know the answer to this already from your perspective, but if you had to say the number one quality that you're going to look for in a new city manager, what would it be? Community
engagement. It's got to be. It has to be.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And hopefully we'll bring some vigor like Vern Ewart had back in the day.
Oh, would love it. Would love it. Yes, sir.
Bring forth ideas. And, anybody can bring forth an idea, but the key is to be able to implement an idea.
Yeah, an ideal, but ideal. What is ideal for this city? Great ideals are just what you sit around and talk about. But if I look at what's an ideal, what is ideal? To me, that is where your vision goes. To try to make things happen.
What Vern Ewart did when the idea of the ideal came from the communicating with the leaders and the people throughout Roanoke, he was so passionate about implementing, he would not stop until that idea was implemented. And you may remember he was kind of the instigator of Explore Park.
Yes.
And he wouldn't let that passion go to the point where he left city manager to become full-time with Explore Park, trying to get that whole idea implemented. So I look forward to your leadership. I look forward to the leadership of our new city manager. I look forward to the leadership of whoever the three new city council members of, because there's going to be three new ones, right?
There's going to be three new ones, yes.
So there's going to be a majority of city council that's new. So get out and vote.
Yes, November 5th. Early voting September 20th. But I just think it's a great time to be, as Mayor Lee would say, it's 8th time All-America City. I believe with that and a new council coming on, the things that we could do are the impossible. Look at the possibilities. Nothing is impossible. We could really make some great strides to make this city where it really should be an 8-time All-American City.
And speaking of All-American City and parts of our city, one of the parts of our city that's been neglected is Williamson Road, which is both where you and I grew up.
Yes, sir.
And I hope going forward that you're going to be able to bring some leadership to that, and I'll be helping in any way I can to bring some leadership and direction to Williamson Road. But I look forward to what might be able to happen there. As I have said many times, the sidewalks I rode on when I was a kid, which is a long time ago, are the same sidewalks you ride on now. So do you have any thoughts on Williamson Road?
Yes, I do. I know the city's looking at some things, and we're also looking at where we should be going. And I just, again, community engagement is the key. Just like what you said, you and I grew up over there. I believe in, if you reach across, whether it's different parts of Northwest, Northeast. I think you got to bring all people to the table and share ideas and be willing to listen. The city does not want to listen. They want it one way and one way, and that's it. No compromise. And I believe you have to respect those who live in that community, who has a skin in the game, so to speak. You've got to allow them to be heard and then make decisions that benefit both sides.
So the key of what I'm hearing today and why I'm voting for you as mayor of our next mayor of our great city is because of the community engagement, the transparency, the openness, the willingness to allow people to say what they want to say, to listen, and to reach decisions that respect those input on both sides. So with that, we're going to have to cut it off for today, but 30 minutes went really quick.
Yes, it did.
But we'll have you back, and
I hope so.
hopefully have you back as mayor.
I would love it. I would love it. I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure's mine.